costs of college. We're going to go over some additional details. I apologize. I'm still admitting students, and Miss Bruno, if you're able, would you mind admitting students as they enter?
Yes, I'm working on trying to do that.
All
And
right.
also, if you can hit the record button from your end.
What happened is to admit students.
All right. So you need to take into consideration not only the actual tuition that's publicized on colleges' websites, but you're also going to have additional fees. If you're living on campus, you'll be paying for room and board. Of course, you'll have books and supplies and equipment, and then travel expenses. If you're going away to school, you can consider that an expense as well, getting back and forth to your campuses. But there is federal money available to help students who are attending college. First of all, and the first that you need to consider are the federal grants. Those include the Pell Grant, the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, service grants, and then teach grants, which are for students who study education and plan to teach in this classroom once they graduate. There's federal work study. These jobs are available on your college campuses. They're administered by the financial aid administrators there on their campuses, and they look great on your first professional resume. So if you're interested in working while you're in school to earn additional money to help pay for your college expenses, federal work study is ideal.
And so I think how could you can apply for it too?
Next, you will be offered perhaps federal student loans, but it's important to note um, and differentiate between the different types of loans. There are direct subsidized loans, which are considered need-based loans. These are for students with financial need. And interest does not accrue on this type of loan while the student is in school, but once they graduate or cease to attend, interest will begin to accrue, and the student will be responsible for interest that accrues and the principal amount they've borrowed. Next, you could see an unsubsidized loan offer on your financial aid award letter. Um, these are basically for all students, but interest is accruing on this type of loan while the student is in school and then continues through the life of the loan. So remember that you always want to accept the subsidized portion first if you need loans to complete your academic year. Parents can borrow on behalf of the students if they choose to, and graduate students. If we have any moms and dads or older siblings out there,
Hey,
there
Anne, is it
is.
possible for you to hit record
Oh,
on your end?
I'm sorry. I believe that I did. Let's see.
It says it's recording.
Okay, good.
Oh, good.
Sorry, man.
All right. So as I mentioned, there are graduate loans available to students who have completed undergraduate studies.
Oh, so
All
could
of these, I'm sorry, could everybody mute themselves so that we don't have any interruptions? Just put your microphone on mute. That would be so helpful. Thank you. All of these monies that I just went over are available to be used at 2 and 4 year colleges, of course, graduate uh, and advanced degrees, community colleges, technical and trade schools. So these are going to be of great benefit to most of you. Your access to these dollars is going to be through the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Some parents are choosing not to complete the FAFSA, that is fine, and they're paying out of pocket, but please keep in mind that you are going to lose access to the Pell Grant, to federal work study. You'll need to complete a FAFSA for the Louisiana Go Grant, for student loans. Some private scholarships require a FAFSA be completed, and then other scholarships and grants as well. Now, for the top scholarship, the FAFSA can serve as your application. All you have to do is submit a FAFSA, and the TOPS office will be alerted. If you choose not to complete a FAFSA, I would encourage you to go onto the TOPS website and complete that application there. All of these monies can be accessed, of course, through the FAFSA, but to complete a FAFSA, you must be a U.S. citizen or national, have a green card or an arrival departure record, have battered immigrant status or a T visa. So a student who holds one of these classifications will be able to complete a FAFSA. If their parents do not fit into any of these categories, that's fine. The student can still participate in the federal program, but the parents will need a little further assistance, and we are glad to help you. I'm going to provide you with my contact information after the session, and I'm sure that your counselor will have some tips for you as well. Now, before you begin the FAFSA, you'll want to make sure that you're gathering all of the documents that you need to complete the form, your FSA ID, which is your Federal Student Aid ID, and we'll go over how to create that in just a moment. You'll need your Social Security cards, your federal income tax statements from the year 2024, your W-2s from that same period, and your bank and brokerage statements as of the date you submit your FAFSA. This is the website to begin the process. You'll want to complete your Federal Student Aid ID. This gives you access to begin a FAFSA. It allows you to sign your FAFSA when it's completed, and also allows you to make edits once it is completed. So now you've got your FSA ID. You'll want to go to the FAFSA website here at studentaid.gov, and you'll see this as your homepage. You will either begin the 26-27 FAFSA if you're planning to go to school in August of 2026. So you guys are the graduating class of 2026. You'll begin school in the fall. So you will want to complete the 26-27 FAFSA. You're applying for aid for that school year. You can edit a form, or you can accept an invitation to contribute to the student's form, all here on the home page. We're going to assume tonight that we're working with a dependent student, so that student, once he logs in with his username and password, as shown here, he'll identify his role as the student, provide his state of residence, and provide consent to have his IRS data transferred over and dropped into the FAFSA. Now, even if you did not complete a tax return in 2024, students, you still will have to provide consent for federal student aid to check with the IRS. If you choose not to do this, you will only be, the student will not be eligible for federal student aid.
Are due for Ally?
Yes, I understand.
That's 4, but you have 18 other schools that will be due.
Look, I do understand, and I have been working.
Hold on just a minute. I'm going to see if we can mute.
I
I just want you to know that that's a whole lot of work.
I know, and I have been working on.
Catherine Pearl, can you please mute your microphone?
I'm so sorry. Okay, so the student must provide consent to have the IRS transfer their information and drop it down into the FAFSA to be eligible for access to federal student aid of any kind. Hopefully, you'll see this screen where your information is being imported, and this is going to save you a great deal of time, and it's much more accurate. So this is new to the system. If you happen to see this screen, this means that your data could not be transferred in from the IRS. And don't panic. It's not a bad thing, but you can continue on and manually enter your info, and I'll provide details about that too. The student will begin the personal circumstances section, where he will report his marital status, his college school plan. And I want to highlight this. I know you're Ben Franklin. I'm sure you all have college credits. You still are going to be considered a first-year freshman for federal student aid purposes. So congratulations, you've done a lot of hard work. You've taken AP courses. Perhaps you've clubbed out of courses or taken dual enrollment. You have that under your belt. But for the FAFSA, please report that you are a first-year freshman. You will be asked to consider these statements. If you can answer yes to just one of these personal circumstances question, as in at any time since the age of 13, was this student an orphan with no biological or adoptive parents, or a ward of the court? Were they in foster care? And you can continue on to look at this list. If you don't fall into one of these categories, you will select none of these apply, and that will determine you as a dependent student. Now, if you can answer yes to just one of these, you will need to gather the legal documentation proving that, because the financial aid office will ask you for it. Is the student homeless? Is he an unaccompanied youth or at risk of being homeless? If you can't answer one of those prior questions, perhaps you are in a difficult situation. You can state here that you have unusual circumstances, and then you'll want to contact the financial aid office at your colleges directly and work with them to continue through the process. Now, what are unusual circumstances? Let's say that the student has been abandoned or estranged from their parents and no one has adopted them. He's left home due to an abusive situation. Perhaps the student is incarcerated or his parents are, or the student has been granted refugee or asylee status, or is a victim of human trafficking. So if you fit into one of these categories, you should contact the financial aid office to begin working with them directly. Here are a couple of circumstances that are not considered unusual. The parents don't claim you on your tax return, or the student doesn't live with his parents. Maybe he pays his own bills, supports himself. However, he cannot answer yes to one of the prior dependency status questions. Perhaps the parents just don't want to provide information because of privacy concerns, or the parents aren't paying for your educational expenses. You still are going to be considered a dependent student in the eyes of federal student aid. So work with your parents. If they would like to talk to your counselor or they like to speak to me directly about their concerns, we're happy to work with them. Then the student will move on into the dependency status section. This screen usually provides some sense of uncertainty. Be sure that the student understands that if he says yes to this question, he is applying only for the non-need-based federal student loan. And because we want everybody to be considered for the free money as well, we encourage you as a dependent student to answer no to this question. We'll move to student demographics, where the student will provide his sex, his ethnicity, and then list and identify his citizenship status. He will provide information about his parents' education. Why is that? If a student's parents have never attended college, He is going to be considered a first-generation college student. Therefore, he could be offered additional financial aid. So make sure you speak with your parents and you're answering this question correctly. Did the student file a tax return in 2024? What is their completion status? And I know each and every one of you are going to be graduating with your diploma, and it'll be well deserved. The student will then move into the finance section and then provide information about his tax return if he filed one in 2024. These are the screens that you're going to see if you were unable to to transfer your information from the IRS and have it dropped into the FAFSA itself. Now, I'm here to answer any questions that you have once you get into the FAFSA, but also note that there will be a question mark beside every field. And if you need additional explanation and description of exactly what federal student aid would like you to report in these fields, click on that question mark and you will get a detailed description. The students must then tally up the balances of their savings and checking accounts and any cash that they might have on hand and enter the number here. If the student has any investments, including real estate, he will calculate the current net worth, not the value, but the net worth of that property and enter it in this field. Next, you can enter the current net worth of any businesses and farms that the student might own. You'll move into the college and career school selection section, where you will choose which schools you want your FAFSA data to be sent to. So federal student aid is not going to send out your information to every school around the nation. You have to give them permission to do that, and you can add up to 20 schools. If you are planning to apply to more than 20 schools, please enter your first 20, submit the FAFSA. Once it's processed, you'll receive notification via email, and you can go in and make an edit to your FAFSA, remove the first 20, and add the next 20, and so on. Now it's time for the student to identify his contributors. Now, who are those contributors? I'm trying to move this screen out of the way. You can see here that a parent contributor that has never been married will be reported, and it'll be the parent who provided you with the most financial support in the past 12 months. So the student will be responsible for identifying that parent. If the parents are unmarried, but they do live together, both of those parents will be considered contributors. If the parents are married, of course, they're both going to contribute to your FAFSA. But what if they are widowed or divorced, and then they've remarried? Now you will have to provide information about your legal parent and step parent. And for those that are divorced or separated, just as it would be with a parents that were never married, the parent who provided the student with the most financial support in the last 12 months will be identified as the only contributor on that student's FAFSA. If, as many people say, well, my parents share in that responsibility, in that case, you will provide and ask the parent who has the greater income or assets to contribute to your FAFSA. This is what the next screen will look like, and it will ask you to provide the email of your parent contributor. You will add that here, and an invitation will be sent out to that parent. Now it's time for the student to sign his FAFSA, and once he does that, the parent can get involved and can contribute their information to the student's FAFSA as well, and they must do that for the student's FAFSA to be complete. But before you do this, please use these green check marks to drop down each of these sections and take a look at every question you were asked and take a look at your answers. Make sure they're accurate so the financial aid office can provide you with your financial aid offer in a timely fashion. The student then will read through this agreement. Remember that it is legally binding. The student is confirming that the information he's provided is correct to the best of his knowledge. Once he signs, he will receive a pop-up telling him that his submission is pending. In the meantime, your parent has received their contribution email. You will see that there's an invitation code here. The parent can either go to the FAFSA website and select to contribute as a contributor, and they will be asked for this invitation code. Or they can use the email that they receive this code in to go directly to the student's FAFSA. The parent will log in with his username and password. Agree to share their information. And then they will also have to provide consent for the IRS to drop their tax information into that student's FAFSA. So remember, whether you filed a return in 2024 or not, you do have to provide consent as the parent to have the IRS check your information, or the student will be offered only federal student loans. This is the screen you're looking for, that it's importing your data. If not, you will have to go through a couple of additional steps, but we're here to help you if you need it. Parents will be asked questions about their marital status, their state of residence. So this could be a state outside of Louisiana. If you were a student whose parents are divorced and your parent lives in another state, the one who's been identified as a contributor, they will want to know the state of that parent's residence and the date that they became a resident of that state. Next, you'll move to the parent finances. If anyone in the family has participated in any of these federal benefit programs, you'll want to identify that here. And remember, that's any time during the 24 or 25 tax year. You'll be asked to report your tax filing status, and if you've joint filed with a spouse. And then they'll ask about your family size. So some will say, well, why aren't they looking at the IRS tax return? Well, they are looking at it, but what you reported in 2024 may not be accurate in 2025 or 26. So this is your opportunity to add any dependents that you may have since 2024, or perhaps you have fewer dependents. Please report this manually. If nothing has changed, you can just continue on. The number of students that that parent will have in college. Now, this is important. This year, this information is not going to be sent over to the financial aid office. But if you are a parent with more than one student in college during the 26-27 academic year, you will want to contact the financial aid office directly, because we've been told that they are no longer required to consider that in the student's financial aid offer. But if it were me, I would contact them and ask them for additional support. So be sure and list the number you have in college, but also know that it's your responsibility to contact the financial aid office if you are in this situation. You will be then asked for information about your tax return, but this is for parents who were not successful in downloading their information from the IRS. If you need help, don't hesitate to reach out. If the parent who's serving as the contributor received any annual child support for the last complete calendar year, you'll want to add up those monthly payments or whatever situation you're in. You will have to manually tabulate that information and drop it in this box. And it's not what the other parent has been lawfully directed to pay, it is what you have actually received. Then the parent will add up their cash and savings account balances and any cash they might have on hand and enter that under parent assets. Next, the current net worth of any investments that you as the parent contributor might have, including real estate, but not your family home. You never have to report the value of your family home. They will not use that against you. And then the current net worth of businesses and farms the parent might have at the time they submitted the FAFSA. I think we had 1 year, which was last year, where parents that lived on family farms or fisheries did have to report the net worth of those businesses, but that has been removed this year. So if you're in that situation, good for you. Also, if you have a family business with 100 or fewer employees, you do not have to report the net worth of that business. So, as you can see, you're going to be reporting your income from 2024, but your assets as of the date you submit your FAFSA. If the parent's contributor is married, then you will put the date here or that person's birthday here. And then it's time for the parent to sign and submit the FAFSA. Of course, reviewing all the information that you've provided federal student aid before you sign. Agreeing that your information is correct to the best of your knowledge, and then press submit. So you can see that this student's FAFSA is complete. Now, if there are any errors in the FAFSA that are caught by federal student aid, they will contact you via email to ask for clarification on those. But otherwise, federal student aid's job is done and they're sending your information onto the schools that you are considering. And remember to add all of the schools, even if it's a long shot, maybe it's last on your list. It's easier to report your data to them now than it is to wait and then have to go back in and resubmit a FAFSA. Once the student's FAFSA is submitted, he will receive a FAFSA submission summary. And of course, this also will pop up on the screen. You will see your name, the date that federal student aid received your application, the date it was processed, and a data release number. This data release number is important because if you want the college to make corrections to your FAFSA for you and you don't want to have to go back in and change something yourself, you can always provide them with this data release number. You will be shown your federal Pell Grant eligibility. Remember that this is an estimate of what you might be offered. Federal student aid is just the conduit between you and your financial aid offices. So this student looks like he may not be eligible for federal Pell Grants, but he could be offered federal direct loans and perhaps work study. If you see that you have a problem, you can make a correction here. You can go to Visit My Aid to find out more information on your file itself. But one thing that most counselors and students are looking for is their student aid index. And this is important because there may be some private or outside scholarships that ask for this information. This will tell the student how much, this is actually just a formula. This is not a dollar amount, but it will tell the college what they believe that the student may be eligible to receive. This is a look at your FAFSA submission summary. You can see that it's all listed here, your answers on the FAFSA and the questions that you were asked. You will be shown a list of the schools that you sent your FAFSA data to. So in a couple of months, you're not sure if you sent your FAFSA over to a specific university, you can always look at your FAFSA submission summary. Now, every time you submit a FAFSA or you make a correction to the FAFSA, you will receive a new submission summary. There is a wealth of information on what to do next. Your responsibility as a FAFSA completer. So please feel free to use these resources. They will be of great benefit to you. So now you've submitted your FAFSA. What's going to happen next? First of all, Federal Student Aid's sharing your information with all of your colleges. The school's financial aid office will pull down that data, and most often they'll wait until the student has been accepted to the university before they begin working on a financial aid offer for that student. So make sure you're getting those college applications completed. And then, of course, the school, once your offer has been calculated, they will email you directly about your offer. They are at this point trying to calculate your cost of attendance on their campus. So of course, everybody is going to have a different cost of attendance on each campus, whether you're going to be living on campus or with your parents, or you're going to be living on your own. All of those FAFSA questions will determine your cost of attendance. The financial aid office will be looking around for any grants and scholarships that they can offer you to attend their college and provide you with your net price. And that is what you and your family will be responsible for paying for this one academic year. You should receive your offers from colleges in a pretty timely fashion. They're not on the same timeline, but if you're getting eager to find out and you've given them a month or so, to do their work, you've completed your portion of the process, it doesn't hurt to contact them and ask them about your offer. Now, they won't all be like this. There's talk about making these forms uniform. However, at this time, every college will have a little bit different looking financial aid offer, but they all should show your cost of attendance and they'll line item any grants, scholarships, loans, work study, maybe some outside scholarships that they've heard that you have won, and they will provide that to you so you can get a good idea of exactly how much you'll need to come up with out of pocket. You want to put those aid offers side by side if price is important to you, and determine which is best for you and your family. You always want to accept your aid in this offer. Your scholarships and grants first, because that's free money that doesn't have to be repaid. Federal work study you've already earned, so you don't have to pay that back. But loans you need to be very careful with. Please have a conversation with your parents about what a loan is and your responsibility for repaying it. Also, if you do find that you need additional money to help you pay for school and it's not offered to you on your financial aid letter, you want to kind of start looking around for some opportunities. But when you are looking, make sure that you are getting your best interest rate. And I know that Ms. Bruno has been speaking with you and posting diligently on her website about scholarship opportunities. This is prime time for seniors to be looking for those monies to help them pay for school. She is probably your best bet. for those opportunities, but you can also look around for them. Maybe your parents have worked for companies that offer scholarships to their employees' children, nonprofit organizations, local businesses, school groups. So remember that every scholarship you earn is that much less student loan debt. So do your homework and continue on looking for those scholarship opportunities. Leela offers a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship. We award this randomly. One winner is selected each month. And if you're planning to complete a FAFSA, you can use this QR code to apply for this scholarship now. We also offer a Choose Louisiana scholarship. The same situation, it is a random drawing. If you're planning to attend or you are attending a college in the state of Louisiana, whether you are students or parents or graduate students or counselors, you can apply for this scholarship if you were attending a college here in our state. We have completed the FAFSA completion guide and workbook for the class of 2026. Um, and we're going to be sending that out to Ms. Bruno, and I'm sure she'll be distributing those to you. If you would like an electronic copy, it covers a lot of the information, maybe a little bit more than I was able to provide you tonight. If you are an eager beaver, you can always apply for FAFSA Beta. They're in their second round. I hear that it's going swimmingly. So please go to studentaid.gov/join beta to apply. And perhaps you can get an early start on your FAFSA. We've also completed our senior checklist for college planning. If you follow along here and take advantage of a lot of these good resources, you will be ready to start school in the fall. If you want to reach out to me directly, I'm providing my email address. Perhaps it's something you don't want to speak in a large group about. I'm happy to work with you individually. If you want to go ahead and jump on into your FAFSA, but you have a question while you're in the form and you want to call our helpline, we're available. And if you want to schedule a free virtual FAFSA session where a legal rep will be with you while you complete, you can share your screen with us and we will help you work through the process. You can use this QR code to schedule that session. We're already booking up, so if you are interested, I want to give you a minute or so to go ahead and schedule your session.
And it looks like we have a couple questions.
Okay.
The
I do
first
want to
question,
I do want to
yes.
mention to you, Ms. Bruno, that I've heard from Miss Baptiste, and she said that she was stuck in traffic.
Okay.
But she's asking if she can still present this evening.
Sure.
So I want to answer that for her. And then I want to answer the questions. All right.
Okay, the first question was, how does a rental property factor into assets? We're a smaller business, less than 100 employees.
If you have if you own real estate and you are leasing that out, of course, that income will be reported on your tax return from 2024. So that income, if you've received any, is going to be taken care of there on the IRS data retrieval tool, the download. But for the assets, because you have to report the income from 24, but now in the asset section, you have to report the net value of that asset. So you will just take the amount that the property was last appraised at, subtract out any debt that you might owe on that property, and that is your net worth of that. That's the net value of that property.
Okay, the second question was, are funds in Louisiana START accounts held by grandparents or friends reported on the FAFSA?
The ones that are owned by the parents are, but recently laws were changed so that grandparent holdings do not have to be reported. So I thought that was a really interesting turn of events. So if you have grandparents that have a START account in your name, students, then you will not have to report that asset.
And our last question is, if you technically don't qualify for a need-based aid, should you still complete a FAFSA? I'll answer a little bit that first. So for the top, in order to qualify for TOPS, you need to have a FAFSA on file, or you have to complete a TOPS application. So I recommend just doing FAFSA. But if you want to answer the rest of that.
Yes, and remember that we went over the programs that you will be able to participate in, and I kind of want to go back to that slide. Hold on. Close your eyes because I'm going to zoom back. All right, let me move this out the way. Of course, TOPS can serve as your FAFSA can serve as your TOPS application. You could receive a Louisiana Go grant, be considered for that if you complete your FAFSA. Of course, some private scholarships and require that you complete a FAFSA. But I will say this, that colleges use that FAFSA submission to initiate financial aid. So if you've applied to LSU and you've gone, through admissions and you've completed your admissions application, nowhere in the picture is the financial aid office picking up the fact that you are interested in any kind of financial aid from LSU. And that could include institutional aid. So all colleges are different. All scholarship and grant programs are different. But if you choose not to complete a FAFSA, please contact your colleges and let them know. Ask them what you're missing out on, or let them know, I'm not completing a FAFSA, but I am interested in additional aid that you can offer. I hope that was helpful.
Yes, thank you. And I'm also looking for, I don't see Miss Baptiste on yet.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, it looks like we have another question.
Okay, good.
You said there was a question in the application the student should answer no to qualify for certain free monies. However, I wasn't clear what the question was. Could you go over that again?
Okay, I'm so sorry. I was trying to admit Miss Baptiste. Let's see.
Okay.
I think that was her. All right. Would you please repeat that question?
Yes. You said there was a question in the application. The student should answer no to qualify for certain types of free monies. However, it wasn't clear what the question was. Could you go over that again?
Was it the question where the students ask if he is interested in unsubsidized loans only? There is a question that's often overlooked or misunderstood about the student's desire to apply for only student loans. If a student is considered and identified as a dependent student, but they do not report parental information, they're only going to be offered direct unsubsidized loans. So that may be the question that you were asking about. You always want to be considered for all of the federal student aid.
You want some dinner?
Okay. The next question is order of operations question 1. Student sets up a FAFSA account and invites parents as a contributor. 2, parents set up a FAFSA account and accept invite. Is that accurate? Can we have these 2 steps be taken now?
That is accurate.
Yes.
And the parents can apply for a federal student aid before they receive their invitation. They can go ahead and get that out of the way, which brings me to those parents who already have a federal student aid ID. Maybe you have an older child or you have your own ID when times that you were in college. You want to go in before you start contributing to a new FAFSA. You'll want to go in, mom and dad, and check at the accuracy of your information. So make any changes you need to. If you have a new email or a new mobile phone or you've moved, change all of that before you begin contributing to your student's FAFSA.
Okay. The next question is, if married and filing jointly, do both parents need to each have a FAFSA account?
That's a great question. Only one parent needs to create a federal student aid ID and serve as a contributor if they filed married jointly. The purpose of the ID is to transfer that tax data. So if you have parents who are married and live together, however, they file separately, that will be two downloads from the IRS. So we'll have to do mom's retrieval and then dad's. So only for those parents who filed married separate will both of you have to create an ID.
Okay, the next question is, I am on an H-1B visa and my child is on an H-4 dependent. Do I have to fill out the FAFSA form and can you get the award?
I'm going to ask you to contact me directly so that we can kind of take a look and make sure you do have the documents that you're talking about. Let's talk about that in a private conversation.
And then our last question is, if you rent on one side of your home, do you have to report the net value of your home in this scenario?
Well, I've never been asked that before. It will, if you report it as income, it's going to, of course, be pulled in from the IRS. I'm not going to answer that question until I do a little bit of research. So if that parent wants to provide me with their contact info, or if they want to email me directly, I'll have to see about that. But when Miss Baptiste joins our group, hopefully
She's
she'll
here.
have good. I think that would be a good time for her to answer that question since she is a skilled financial aid assistant director. And let's let her answer that question.
Okay.
Okay, I'm answering that question now. Good evening, everyone. That question would be more so geared for the CSS profile, where it does ask about rental property as well as it asks about your residential home. So you would be reporting that once, and then as far as there's a Schedule E that should be a part of your tax return that would then require you to just report that as income. I don't believe you'd be reporting that residential home twice because it's still your residential home, regardless of you renting out the other side.
Great. Now, Miss Bruno, I have somehow lost access to inviting Miss Baptiste to be a co-host.
Hmm.
And I know she probably wants to share her screen. So
Okay, let me try. I think that I'm actually a participant, not a host.
okay.
Would it be better to send maybe the presentation to one of you or?
That would be good if you want to send it to carmichael@leela.org.
Okay, sending it now.
Yeah, it looks like I'm a participant.
Okay. Apologize about that.
Let's see if I can make it to the.
That okay. Sending that right this minute.
All right, great.
Should be coming through. And it was sent like a minute or so ago. Let me know if it's been sent. On my end, it's saying sent. But I also send in a request. It says sharing is not turned on, so I can send a request as well to
Okay.
request to share.
Request to share if you don't mind. I have
Yep.
not received it. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Still haven't received it, so you might want to just share.
Can you promote her to host? Okay, there we
There
go.
we go.
We
Yeah,
had two more questions. I don't know if we want to take those later.
you can go ahead if they're
If
FAFSA related. We'll have Miss
that's
Betsy.
related, is credit card debt factored into the asset section?
No, not in the not for the FAFSA.
And then for the other one was for military or other families that may have multiple states of eligible residency, does FAFSA allow for input of the type of information or will it only accept one state?
I don't think I understood that question. Miss Baptiste, did you? Would you repeat
Okay,
it?
Can you
sure.
repeat that question again?
For military or other families that may have multiple states of eligible residency, does FAFSA allow for input of that type of information or will it only accept one state?
For the FAFSA and for the CSS profile, it's only asking for a residency of one state. I don't think you can put multiples, but if you hold residency for the CSS profile, it doesn't factor in or matter where your residency lies as far as eligibility of institutional aid. But for the FAFSA, I know that could be very important because it does ask for residency for a particular reason, most likely for in-state or out-of-state charges for the university or college. And does that sound
Yes,
clear?
and for
Oh,
the top scholarship too, if you
right,
have if one of your parents has a Louisiana residence, uh, I would definitely use Louisiana if you're
correct.
interested in that top scholarship.
Okay, that was the end of the questions.
Okay, thank you all so much for your patience and your time. My apologies for the delay on my part regarding the CSS profile. If I may begin, is that okay, ladies?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you all so much, parents and students and everyone for your patience and time. My name is Chantrella Baptiste, and I'm an assistant director with Tulane University. And so I'll be presenting on the CSS profile, generally speaking, and I'll be available to answer any questions as best as possible regarding my expertise on the CSS profile, most likely from a Tulane University standpoint, but also continuing to encourage you to check with that university or college of choice on their options or questions or concerns you may have about the institutional aid that they provide utilizing the CSS profile. So again, thank you so much for your time and effort that you've made available to me this evening. For the financial aid consideration, of course, as Ms. Carmichael expressed about the FAFSA, that's for the federal aid, but you have colleges and universities that have institutional aid, and most of those colleges and universities utilizes the CSS profile, which is the College Scholarship Service profile. And those applications are available as we speak. The FAFSA is available now and coming up rather, and the CSS profile will be available in October for the 26-27 academic year. The FAFSA versus the CSS profile, it is fairly similar, but definitely have its differences. Whereas the FAFSA is a little more generalized, the CSS profile is a little more specific, and it factors in several additional forms of information. Whereas the FAFSA does not, for example, concerns itself with the home equity of the residential home, the CSS profile does. Whereas the FAFSA is only utilizing one parental information, whomever is the custodial, to gather the credibility or the financial data is used for both families, both parents, for the CSS profiles. That's to gather the financial strength of the student as a whole. So they're looking at both families. So if parents are not married or divorced or separated, they are looking at the information, the financial information of both parents. So you would have the custodial parent and the non-custodial parent. The university or college does not determine who has the status of custodial or non-custodial. So that's very important that the parents do discuss that information prior to completing the CSS profile, as well as the FAFSA, because both the CSS profile and the FAFSA for the custodial parent must have the same parent. So that is very important. Now, there are special cases where there is not a non-custodial parent present, or that there is some type of stipulation or what have you where you cannot provide that parental information for the non-custodial parent. And then you want to reach out to the university or college of interest to discuss more information regarding that CSS profile for the non-custodial parent. The retirement accounts are important as well, not only just to see if you have that information or that income in the retirement accounts, is more so to see which parent is the eldest parent and how close you are to retirement, because that means that the income that you're earning will be null and void or reduced tremendously, because you'll then only be relying on that retirement income. So that is very important to make sure that you report that information on the CSS profile. For the tax deferred pensions, that information that's on your W-2, that information is not being requested on the FAFSA, but it is being requested on the CSS profile. You also have business equity that is now also being reported on both the FAFSA as well as the CSS profile. You do have the 529 plan. The student or the parent rather is counted as the owner, and it is considered an asset. So that's very important. But do keep in mind that each year that you're utilizing that income in that 529 plan, as you complete the CSS profile, you want to be as open as possible on that dollar amount, because yes, it is an asset, but we do know that those funds are being utilized, so it is being reduced. Untaxed Social Security benefits is not reported on the FAFSA, but it is reported as untaxed income on the CSS profile. And then you have medical or private school expenses, which is a plus to a lot of families, because under the FAFSA, you have to do a special circumstance or professional judgment, which some universities and colleges we call a PJ. Whereas on the CSS profile, you can provide that information on that application. And it does help the families because it gives insight to the income and assets being utilized to pay for the other siblings' educational expenditures. So that's important. And that's just a few of the major factors, but there are some other mitigating factors as well. But we just wanted to point those out as some of the leading factors. The CSS profile is an application that families use, again, as explained, is utilized for institutional financial aid that universities and colleges may offer. 400 colleges and universities, and going up as the changes in the federal side happens, more institutions are relying on their income or their financial, I guess, support to help the families and students for educational purposes. So you're going to find more and more colleges and universities having special applications such as the CSS profile to help families and students as a lot of changes are happening with the federal student aid program. It also supports international students. I did view that someone asked about visas and about the financial information that's utilized on the FAFSA. Do know that universities and colleges use the CSS profile, and institutional aid can be offered to international students. So that's important as well. So don't count yourself out in case you are an international student, you have an international student. And the reason for the CSS profile is the difference is that you have the FAFSA, whereas it's only asking for one parental information, if that is your circumstance. The CSS profile wants to gather the information of both families, meaning if you are a family that has separate parents, they want to make sure that they're gathering all of the financial strength. It's not required that both parents provide financial support for the student. But from the institutional side, they want to make sure that they're being fair and equitable by calculating both parental information. And that is also inclusive of your spouse. So if you are remarried, that is important to know that it will be counted, both the spouse and the parent income and asset information, regardless of whether that other parent, the step parent, is willing to support or not. The universities and colleges do utilize the financial data of both parents and their spouses. And this is just a chart to give an idea of the parental information that is being requested on the CSS profile. It will be the parental data, such as the biographical, demographic, the income, the assets, and parental expenses, whereas the FAFSA, again, is expressed. It doesn't look at the parental expenses or the student's expenses, but the CSS profile does get a comprehensive review of your family's financial strength. So in the end, the expected family contribution number that it used to be called, which is now a student aid index for the FAFSA, for the CSS profile, the universities and colleges still utilize that acronym EFC. So you would have those figures being different, where the financial strength on the FAFSA is one number, but the CSS profile, through all of its calculations of all the information provided, has a different expected family contribution number or financial strength. You want to verify that you're putting in the proper information when you're doing the CSS profile. You want to make sure that you sign up for an account. So both the custodial parent and non-custodial parent will need to have that information.
Yum yum. Don't give him shit else. You did give him something. Look at him. He looked like he got something.
Can we mute that,
Gwendolyn
please? I'm
Taylor,
sorry.
you need to mute.
And for the, again, for the college seniors or the high school seniors who will graduate in the spring of 2025, which actually will be 2026, if you will. So my apologies about this. This presentation was set up before the new applications came out. But in the spring of 2026, of course, as stated, the CSS profile will be available in October. So you want to make sure that you have all of that information available and ready, and you can have the application access set up. So both the student will have it set up, and then they can provide a number for the other parent to access that application and complete the rest of it. The non-custodial parent, as expressed, must also complete an account as well. The custodial household application, there is a cost for it, whereas the FAFSA is free. The CSS profile does have a charge for the application, but there is an availability to request a waiver, and that would be on the College Board website, where you can seek a waiver to waive the $25 application fee. Domestic undergraduate students, of course, you can again request for the waiver, and this is some of the information that is being sought so that you can seek a waiver of it. And this is how the CSS profile looks. It's very important because any of this information, much like the FAFSA, it is very meticulous. So if you're missing any information, you're missing a social security number, or you input something like like the student may say they already have a degree, or they may already have some type of education, it could throw off the applications being received by the university or college, or being received and there is an error. But no fret, you can update the CSS profile at least once to make any changes to any errors that did occur. Again, you want to put the same information, much like the FAFSA, the student's name, their date of birth, and their social. You want to make sure all of that is correct because, again, we're matching this application with the FAFSA. So in any event that something is not matching with the FAFSA, which we know that the FAFSA is connected to Homeland Security, they're connected to the Social Security Administration Office. So they have those barriers in place or those things in place to capture those errors so that the student doesn't submit some information on the FAFSA. However, the CSS profile or College Board does not have those things connected. So therefore, if something is in error, oftentimes it's going to delay the university or college receiving it because it's not connecting to the information on the FAFSA. So you just want to make sure that the students is properly putting in all of their information as accurate as possible. Again, those critical questions, just like on the FAFSA, they are asking these vital questions to determine whether or not the student is dependent or independent. So it's very important that the student answers those questions as accurately as possible. Again, this is the student section as well, and there are special circumstances. So if it does fit the student when they're completing the CSS profile, is very important to answer accordingly. Again, it goes back to my original indication of who's the custodial parent and non-custodial parent. That's important because you want to make sure that it is matching up with the FAFSA itself, should you have a situation where the marital status of the parents is separated or divorced. But if you are together but not married, or divorced but you are together but not married, again, I'm sorry, there is that specific marital status on the FAFSA, and there is that specific marital status on the CSS profile. So you want to make sure that if that is your circumstances, your marital circumstance, where you're unmarried but living together, you want to make sure that you accurately indicate that as well as indicate your spouse's information. Again, this goes back to the relationship to the parents and the students themselves, whether or not you are the custodial or non-custodial, making sure that you press save on all of the information so that it's not erased upon your removal from the application or you leaving the application. So you want to report the parental information as far as the country that you're living in. And this is how you report the siblings of the family and their ages and the relationship of the student to that dependent or the sibling. And it's also where you will be reporting which whether or not the sibling is in college. Now, whereas the FAFSA is utilizing the information for the household as it's in its entirety, the CSS profile still does ask whether or not you have a sibling in college, and it does play a factor in the financial strength of the family. So keep that in mind, though the federal student aid program has done away with that. The universities and colleges, many of them are still looking into whether or not you have a sibling in college in an undergraduate, seeking an undergraduate degree, because that plays a factor in your family's financial strength, reducing how much of a strength that the student will be receiving for that particular university or college. You also want to report your current income. It would be 2023 if it was 25-26 school year, but for the year 2026-2027, it would be your 24 tax information. It would be everything as it relates to the 2024 year. Again, you want to provide all of your parental data information as far as the income, assets, and family members. There are questions here where they are asking whether or not you have pensions. For example, pensions and annuities is one of the most vital questions of concerns because if it is a rollover, it should not be reported. So just want to point that out amongst all of the other income and asset information. One of those things that we still find often a hiccup is the pensions and annuities. Again, you want to report all of your financial data from your W-2s and as far as your tax information, whereas the FAFSA allows for you to utilize the IRS data retrieval tool or the tool itself where it connects from the IRS directly to the FAFSA. For the CSS profile, it's very meticulous, so it's going to be requesting that you read line by line to report that information on the CSS profile. It is going to ask about special circumstances, whether there was a loss of income in any sort. And it's going to ask you to say yes or no to that, but you will provide more details to the university or college that you're interested in, your student is interested in. That's where you will be more specific with the concern of a loss of job, because again, you're looking at 2024, but then obviously a whole year has passed, meaning 2025, where things could have changed. So it's very important that if that is a special circumstance that you have experienced or your family is experiencing a loss of income, loss of job, retirement, benefits changes, even elder care is something of a special circumstance where, life is changing and you now have a family member, the student's grandparent or what have you has to come and reside with you, or you're now spending funding on taking care of that loved one. That is important that you would answer yes to that circumstance, but then you would reach out to the university or college to let them know about that concern. Again, you want to report other assets that you may have, any cash, checking, savings accounts that you have. You also want to report your primary home, other real estate. In other real estate, it's a tricky question that was asked. It wasn't tricky, but it was kind of whether or not you would report your primary residence because you are, but you're also, say you're living in a duplex or you own a duplex and you're renting the other side or you're renting a room out of that home. It is considered a primary home, but that income that you're receiving, it should have been reported on the Schedule E. And then you would report that as income that you're receiving. If it's in cash or if you've invested it, then you'll be reporting it as an investment. But if you have another real estate, meaning another separate property, that is my understanding, is that that's where you would report other real estate. If it was a completely separate form of property, then you would report that. You would also, another factor is reporting assets from the younger sibling. If there is some type of savings account, a 529 plan for that sibling, or a trust, that's also important. Whereas FAFSA is not looking at that, the CSS profile is looking to have that information reported. That's what universities and colleges are asking. So that question is very important. Here is where you will report the school code, much like the FAFSA. You will report which college or university you want to have that information once it's all completed. Again, you want to make certain that you're choosing the correct college or universities. You should not report graduate school or law school or medical school. And you want to verify that the university or college accepts the CSS profile from undergraduate applicants. So if your student is seeking, of course, their first bachelor's, that's very important to make sure, and make sure that you're reporting, again, the correct college or university. Housing plans, just like the FAFSA, is very important. And one of the most vital questions here we have is whether it's early decision, early action, or regular decision. That is very important because the university or college is going to be looking to match that information with what you put on the application for admittance as well. Again, special circumstance is very important. Another special circumstance will be medical or dental expenses that you have, or even some universities or colleges look at the expenses that you had to pay to repair your home after a disaster or an unexpected change. So that's also considered a special circumstance. So just keep that in mind as well. Again, an update, you can make one update to the CSS profile, and then after that, you won't be able to make any more updates directly through the College Board, but you can still reach out to the university or college that you're interested in, your student is interested in, and provide them with the updates. And they have the ability to make the updates. We have the ability to make the updates to the FAFSA as well as the CSS profile. Again, you want to have the student pay very close attention to when they are seeking admittance to the universities so that it can match with the CSS profile and the FAFSA itself. It's highly recommended regardless, you're not penalized for doing it too early. So completing those applications as soon as they come out is not a penalty at all. But waiting too late to do them can cause a problem. So you want to make sure that any dates that you have tied to the admittance application also coincides with when those CSS profile and the FAFSA are completed. So again, we can't stress enough, you're not penalized for applying early. So as early as October 1st, October 15th, regardless of the admissions application, you want to make sure that if you can do those financial applications early, please do so. You may not receive an aid offer until these particular dates have passed, meaning early decision, early action, or regular decision for admittance. That's where it plays a factor in when you'll get an aid offer, but you're not penalized for having the applications for aid completed as soon as possible. The common mistakes, again, is applying for the wrong academic year. Again, the CSS profile for 26-27 will be out in October, but it will also be during the same time that the 25-26 application is out. So you want to make sure that you're doing the correct year. Whereas on the admittance application, if you're doing Common App, it may not be required to provide your social security number, meaning the student. But for the CSS profile, again, to match it with the FAFSA, which most universities and colleges do so, to make sure that the student is receiving all types of aid that they may qualify for. They want to make sure that on the CSS profile, you put the student's social security number. Entering the student's or parent's date of birth incorrectly. Again, we're matching the FAFSA and the CSS profile with one another. So you want to make sure all of that information is correct as far as the name, date of birth, and the social. Again, making sure that the school that you're listing, the student is listing, making sure that it's for the undergraduate program, the undergraduate degree itself. And then not utilizing the special circumstances section. That's where you can at least give a general informational about your family or what you're experiencing. Hey, my life has changed, things have changed. This is where you will initially introduce what is transpired or any changes that may have occurred between one fiscal year to the next fiscal year, or one, financial dynamic or household dynamic to the next year's dynamic. That's where you'll be able to introduce to the school what has transpired. So please utilize that section if you do have that. And there are tutorials before you complete the application and submit it on College Board. And this is the information here, as well as their customer service telephone number. And I'll leave that up just for a moment. And also, if you want to get an advanced idea of what your family may qualify for, it's not the official aid offer and it's not providing the official um, response to the information you're providing, but just to get a general idea of what the schools are looking for financially, as well as what the student may qualify for, you always want to take advantage of what's called the net price calculator. And that's on the university or college's website where you can access that. And also for the FAFSA, there's an estimator. So where it says 24, 25 again, 25, 26 should be available as well. And then 26, 27, 2026, 2027 award year or aid year will be out there as well. Again, the FAFSA is an application for federal aid, where the CSS profile or the College Scholarship Service profile is an application for non-federal institutional aid. The CSS profile is a supplemental application to the FAFSA. It's not required, but it's highly recommended to be completed in addition to the FAFSA, so that way your student can receive all types of aid that they may qualify for, and they're not limited to just federal aid. You want to keep all tax information up to date and accessible in case the university or college requires that it is submitted. For Tulane, for example, in addition to the CSS profile, what we require is that the tax information proof of the tax information that you provided on that CSS profile. So for 26, 27 academic year, we will be seeking 24 tax returns and W-2s just to validate that what you reported on that CSS profile is accurate. And most universities or colleges may also request that as well. So you want to have that readily accessible because, again, as stated on the CSS profile, it doesn't utilize an IRS data retrieval tool to confirm your income and asset information. So it's going to be seeking, the universities and colleges will be seeking you to submit that information directly. Again, you want to use the special circumstances area on that CSS profile to let the students utilize, or the parents utilize, to let the schools know just generally what's going on. And then from there, you can elaborate more when you get in contact with the school or when they contact you. You can let them know and be able to elaborate more on what you've provided on the CSS profile. You want to try to avoid, again, any of those common mistakes, meaning the biographical, demographical information of the parents and students. You want to make sure of that. Again, you want to make sure that whomever is the custodial or non-custodial parent, that is expressed and determined before completing those applications. That way, the FAFSA and the CSS profile matches for the custodial, and then the non-custodial parent can complete the application on his or her own. You also want to, again, utilize the net price calculator. We can't stress that enough because that kind of gives you a general idea of what the student may be looking at as far as an aid offer from the university or college. It won't give specifics, but it will give an idea of whether it's federal aid or institutional aid that the student may qualify to receive. And this is my supervisor's name, Roland Keller Jr. He's the associate director who was able to provide this presentation for me to present to you all. But again, my name is Chantrella Baptiste, and I am an assistant director at Tulane University. And I thank you all so much this evening for your time. And I am available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanshara. There are a few questions in the box. I will start with them. Does debt play any role in the FAFSA, their CSS, like mortgages?
Yes, they do ask the question of that. They ask the question for the CSS profile. It does ask for the residential home. It asks for the value. It asks for the debt. It asks when you purchased the home, and it asks how much you paid for the home, or at the time, what was the sale at the time. So it does ask all of that information as well, because it is looking at the equity of the home as an asset. Or if you had to take out a second mortgage, that's also important because they're going to ask that. And if you had to take out a second mortgage on your home for whatever particular reason, or the value isn't what you stated it was, school will have something to go by. So that's why it asks for the worth of the home, the value, the debt, as well as what you purchased, what was the purchasing price, and when you purchased it.
Okay, so the next question is, what if the child's non-custodial parent is not in their life and there's no custody order?
That's a good question. And that is a special circumstance. That's where you would reach out to a university or college. And what is available on the College Board website is a waiver for the non-custodial profile application. So the CSS profile for the non-custodial parent can be waived under special circumstance, but you want to speak to that university or college regarding what they're looking for. For Tulane, for example, just generally speaking, what we would seek is that waiver. We would also seek letters of support from those who are aware of the circumstance, as well as from the custodial parent. If there is any legal documentation or any reasoning behind why that non-custodial parent is not available, then that also would be presented. So what you're essentially doing is appealing that university or college to forego its policy of requiring the non-custodial parent under the guidance of your special circumstance. So it's an appeal to say, hey, that parent is not available, and this is why, and I have documentation or, as much supporting information to provide as to why that parent is not available to complete that CSS profile.
Thank you. The next question is adding a school considered a change? Is there an issue if you wait to add a school to avoid wasting money for schools that your student decides not to pursue?
Is that for the FAFSA or the CSS?
CSS.
No, it's not a problem to wait, but again, you want to look at those dates of admissions. So the CSS profile for a lot of universities and colleges, they begin to open that application as early as October and may say, okay, because it's institutional funding, we may exhaust them. You have until February, meaning of that spring semester, of that student actually attending that college to complete that CSS profile. But again, if you want to make sure that you have an aid offer as soon as possible, you want to go by that admittance date. And with that admittance date, meaning early decision, early action, regular decision, they also have the financial aid office providing a date of, hey, if you're going to be admitted in early decision, say December 1, have your application by December 1st. And by that time, you're probably expecting an aid offer by December 15th. So then you want to make sure that if you're applying to that university or college for early decision or early action, you try to get the application for financial aid in at that same time. So you can add as many schools or take away schools, but the adding or removing is important to pay attention to the dates of admittance that you're trying to adhere to.
Would Louisiana Start funds held by grandparents or non-family members on behalf of the student be reported on CSS?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the beginning
Yeah.
of the
So
question.
would Louisiana Start funds held by grandparents or non-family members on behalf of the student be reported on CSS?
Louisiana Start? Is
Louisiana
that,
Start.
529 plans.
okay, that's what I thought it was. The 529 plan, is that going to be utilized? Who is it helping? Because again, that is an asset of if it's for the grandparents who have it, it is not being reported. They're looking at assets of the parents, not the grandparents. So a grandparent like myself, I'm an aunt. I have a 529 plan for my niece or nephew. But for my child, it would be different. So again, if it's the grandparent that has a 529 plan, that is not counted as an asset because it's not the parent.
Okay, great. That was the last question. All right. Anyone else? Okay, I guess we can wrap up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Baptiste for joining us and presenting. I learned a lot too. So I'm not an expert on CSS, but if anybody needs help or has FAFSA questions,